Hey everyone, this is Nate. Thank you for tuning in. And today we're talking specialization versus generalization, meaning should businesses try to focus on just one capability or should they try to cover many different ones? And let me know what you think or which one you would pick for your business, because this is an interesting topic. Personally, I think each strategy has its own pros and cons. But we did bring in some special guests today to help with that, so let's go ahead and listen to Ezekiel's chat with the first one, Chris Beckford, CEO of eTRANSERVICES Corporation.
What we all hear, the typical textbook, if you go by the books, is to specialize in something, be very good at something. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think if you want to provide a niche service, then that's great. If you want to grow a company, niches don't really work. And the reason why is in this climate, in the way the federal government work right now, everything is going on an IDIQ or some type of contract vehicle. You cannot win as a niche and get on an IDIQ. You need IDIQs in order to do business with the government. And those IDIQ require a series of capability. Now, if your niche is cybersecurity and then the IDIQ is only limited to cybersecurity, then that's a win-win for you. If you are a service-disabled veteran-owned business that happens to be an 8A or a woman-owned, and you want to work in the VA, you're going to have to either be a sub, and if you want to be a prime, you have to get on the VA contract vehicle. To get on the VA contract vehicle, you have to show that you have multiple skills and talents and experience across a wide range of areas and capabilities. And the only way to prove that is to do the work or to support yourself with partners that are able to complement. But what I'm seeing more and more is if you're not a part of a joint venture in GSA's world, you can't win at all. And nobody's going to add you to their joint venture team if all you do is provide a niche. They may want you to for one thing, and that's all you will do. And if you're okay with that, that's okay. But if you want to use that joint venture or that vehicle in order to grow your business, where you're not the quote that I normally use, you're sitting on somebody else's plantation, and someday you want to own the farm. You can't do it by being a niche owner. You don't have a farm when you only have chickens.
Let me ask you this. Do you think the size is important? For example, when a company is just starting, is it possible to say, I do X, Y, Z, as opposed to, hey, I specialize in X?
Yes, I think it is. If you're starting right off the bat, then the end state is to generate revenue. But while you're generating revenue, you also have to start with the end in mind. Where do you want to be? So if you want to be a global provider of IT services and you're going to start off just doing cyber and then expand, that's okay. But you have to have that business plan as a guide and leverage it. Because without that, you get trapped. There's a lot of companies right now, all they do is logistics, and then they want to get into IT. That's a killer. It's hard to do. People know you as a farmer, and then you show up and tell me you want to fly my aircraft. Well, I just know that you're a farmer.
But wait a second. If somebody's doing logistics, don't you think that they have enough work in the federal marketplace to be making a living in logistics and be even $1 billion logistics company? Is that not the case?
Well, first of all, you have to go in as a small business you're starting. And when you start, you're going to start most likely as a sub. And you're going to start by fighting among other small business and then fighting the mid-tier and then trying to fight the large. If all you want to do is logistics, and logistics is a big area. So let's say shipping or container shipping. Well, that's a small market. And you have to have the infrastructure to support it. But if you want to do all types of logistics or all things logistics, and you want to grow into that large company that's what they do for a living, the market is pretty much saturated. You just have to figure out the things that you're good at.
Do you think it's easier for somebody who specializes in something to persuade the potential buyer that they're good at what they're doing?
And I'll use an example because I like using examples. You need IT services and you need somebody to basically manage service providers to make sure that your machines stay up all the time. So that's all I do is manage service providing. So if that's all I do, I come to you and I say, oh, by the way, your machines are all operational at peak performance. However, have you thought about security? And then you're going to look at me and say, well, Don't you do that? Well, no, all I do is just manage service provider. However, I do have the capability to provide security. And then after security, then it's asset management. And then after that, SLA management with your other providers. So now I'm capable of doing three things for you. The only thing you want me to do is manage service. And if all I do is manage service, then that's all I will do. I will do managed service for you, and then you will go hire somebody else to do cybersecurity, and you'll hire somebody else to do inventory management. When if I show up and say, I do cybersecurity, however, I also do IT services, I also do systems integration, then now you have a one-stop shop.
But I understand what you're saying is when you start as a sub in a niche, but always have in mind the future. And it's true, all the large integrators, they do it all.
They have the venture capitalists and the investments to do that. As a small business, you have to start off small, and maybe it's just you, all three of you, yourself, and you're doing all the work. And as long as you're doing all the work, at some point, that's called an employment relationship. You want to get to the position of being a business owner or an entrepreneur. And there's a difference between if you're doing all the work, you become an employee. You might as well go get a job somewhere else.
Any merit to the other side, to the specialization? Any case one would make sense?
Let's hit on blockchain. If that's all you do is blockchain, where's the market? How do you find your clients? And because that's all you're going to do, the credibility there is with you. You're known for blockchain, and that's all you're known for. If somebody wants a blockchain expert, they will come find you. But at some point, somebody's going to basically say, okay, well, we want to use this data in another way. You're now going to turn business down, or you're going to basically give it to other partners. But you limit your growth by being specialized. But if that's all you want to do, that's okay too, providing the market is there. Because once that market gets saturated with everybody else who wants to do blockchain, then you have nowhere to turn. What is it that every parent wants their kids to understand? Multiple streams of income, multiple capabilities.
Can you tell us an example where you say, look, I started with this agency doing X, and they asked me Y, and they asked me Z, and everything is fine. I'm doing it all.
I started with a contract doing IT services, on-prem, network, and this was within the Army. And this is doing network switches, application, basic. And it was a $3 million contract. That was a prime award to us. Within 2 years, hey, you also need this. Have you considered cyber? Have you considered this? Well, we can support that. We grew that into maybe $6.8 million in 2 years. Recompeted again. Now, hey, are you thinking about the cloud? Because I'm helping my client look into the future. Are you thinking about the cloud? Are you thinking about enterprise architecture? Are you thinking about the ACAS, the cybersecurity scans? Oh yeah, we can do that. So we now scale. That scaled into a $19 million contract. So that is a perfect example of where things scale. Because if you do blockchain, for example, well, something's going to replace blockchain. Are you thinking far enough into the future where you can help your client evolve while you evolve your business? And that's the key to staying relevant. And the problem is many business going in, cybersecurity. Well, 10 years ago, it wasn't cybersecurity. It was information assurance. And now you're dealing with cybersecurity. In the next 5 years, guess what? With the advent of the cloud and blockchain and zero trust infrastructure, well, it still will be cyber in a different way. There are 400-year-old companies in Europe that are doing IT. And 400 years ago, they were blacksmiths, and then they grew into something else, and they constantly evolved as the market changed. And that's what we should be doing. We should always be evolving, whether it's us mentally. The entrepreneur 10 years ago is not the entrepreneur today.
Really interesting conversation right there, and lots of good points by Chris. So shout out to him for dropping by to share this. Really appreciate it. Again, he's the CEO of eTRANSERVICES Corporation, and you can find his LinkedIn profile in this post. And now moving on to our friend Doug Van Dyke, the CEO of Enquizit. Let's hear what he has to say to Ezekiel.
Doug, where are you in the camp of specializing? I do X, I'm the best. Generalizing, we do it all.
If you stay myopically focused on a single technology and don't stay current on it, or don't look at competitive technologies, an organization could become out of date. However, I will argue that specializing is a more powerful way to understand the deepest part of the technology. So in order to really be a subject matter expert on anything, you've got to stay current on all the technologies in a particular field. And if you try and do that on everything, you're never going to get to the depth that you really need to, especially with how complex IT has become. So, I'll compare it to construction workers. There are general contractors are going to win more opportunities, but when it comes time to actually delivering on the contract, they're not going to have the depth in the electrical, plumbing, foundation work, roofing, and they're going to go out to the specialists. So there's a role for both. There's a role for the generalists. There's a role for specialists. We've taken the specialist approach because I think that you get a higher likelihood, higher probability for success the more that you know on a particular subject or have a particular expertise. And you have to be very proficient with these technologies to guarantee is a tough word, to increase the probability for success. You've got to be deep. You can't afford to be a generalist.
So you mentioned the stay current thing, right, on this thing. So how do you manage that? You're specializing, let's say, in cloud. So how do you know what's the next thing if you're hyper-focused on something?
So specialization can take place, either in the market segment that a company is addressing or in the technologies and core services that they offer. So we're specialists both in the market segment that we're addressing. There's, commercial market segments. Within commercial, you've got financial, you've got healthcare, you've got high tech, and then there's public sector. And within public sector, you've got government, higher ed, state and local government, and whether nonprofits are a third market segment. So we have decided to focus specifically on mission-based organizations. That means we are public sector, and it allows us to stay current in that market segment with the latest news, with industry trends, with technologies are being adopted in the government, how government procurement works. So there's that type of specialization. And then within our core services, our service offerings, we've decided to focus on delivering on Amazon Web Services infrastructure. And we have 100 to stay current on Amazon Web Services. We have 120 accreditation, AWS accreditations. And when I used to work for Amazon Web Services, I started there in 2012. They only had 4 services. Now it's over 200. It might even be closer to 300. So in order to stay current, you have to subscribe. You have to have all of your engineers, studying what the latest services are that come out, reading, staying current on those documents, and then also getting those accreditations. And Amazon Web Services does a pretty good job of ranking their partners by different tiers of familiarity with their services and also within their industries. They have what's called competencies. So they offer government, higher ed, nonprofit competencies, for example. And then for engineers, you can get multiple different level of technical accreditations. And I think that's the way that you really can measure how current an organization is staying on particular market focus or technical focus.
What do you think about the idea that, let's say that your company continues to grow, and then there's not going to be enough demand for a specialized requirement?
What we're doing is adding one core service at a time. We were specifically application development on the Microsoft stack on premise. As we started to develop and grow, we added cloud infrastructure, infrastructure support. Then we added migrations. Then we added disaster recovery. So as we continue to grow in size, we're continuing to add core services into our portfolio. And that way, we're not going to fall into the pit of just having one specialty that becomes irrelevant and the organization dies.
can we talk about profit for a second? So in theory, in an ideal world, if the market works perfectly, you have specialized knowledge, which is paid more by the market, margins are higher, and you have, the barriers of entry are lower. You can more or less hire a networking guy you're going to hire him, you're going to be doing fine. So do you think that is true? Do you think that is a fact in the market, in the government contracting market, where more specialized knowledge has higher margins?
I think you would find that the specialists are going to be paid higher margins. They will have fewer opportunities. So the total revenue may be lower, but the margins may be equal to someone who has lower margins, but they're going to win bigger opportunities, sign bigger contracts, and there will be more contracts. So the margins may end up, the gross margins may end up being the same for both organizations. Revenues will be smaller for the specialists.
And another great discussion. That was Doug Van Dyke making a really solid case for specialization. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it. Once again, he's the CEO of Enquizit. You can also find his LinkedIn profile in this post. So that's it for today. I think there's a lot to learn from each side of the coin here, and I'm glad we got to hear such strong points for both. Be sure to leave your own opinion as well as any thoughts on what Chris and Doug shared. Thank you for tuning in, and special thanks to Ezekiel Russell, founder of Best8a, for running the interviews. Hope to see you all in the next one. Have a great day.